Magnifiers are a really complex topic. You have the thing and then you magnify it with the other thingy. There's a lot of different thingies and thingies that you can do the thing with. Today we're mostly going to be focusing on the Primary Arms GLX 6X magnifier because it is a novel magnification range, and the performance is actually better than what I was expecting. Having used some other 6X magnifiers in the past, the Vortex full-size 6X magnifier, the Sig Romeo, their 4X magnifier, they have a reputation of being bigger, heavier, more expensive, and harder to use. While all of those things are true to one extent or another, what do they actually give you in terms of performance? Now, most of my magnifier experience is with a variety of different 3X magnifiers, and they do the thing. If your use case for a magnifier is to simply take your dot, in this case a Aimpoint Comp M5, which is donated for testing by Mr. Andrew Vachon, so thank you, good sir. But if your use case is essentially a little bit extra positive ID, meaning that you can actually make out what your target is, especially at different distances on very small targets, and I'll give you a very specific example of that shortly. Or if you just want to extend or maximize your point blank range of your rifle, which is essentially what distance can you put the dot on the target, pull the trigger, and make a hit, depending on your rifle, ammunition, zero distance, and a few other factors. Of course, usually that's somewhere between 250-ish and 300-ish yards, depending on, again, all of the other factors going into that. And having a magnifier can help you actually achieve that, because seeing a 6-inch target at 300 yards through your red dot might not be as easy as it sounds, even though in theory you should be able to accomplish that task. And that is of course where magnifiers come in. The most popular, I believe, still are the 3X variants. Almost every company under the sun makes one for varying prices. The performance is relatively similar between all of them: Vortex, Trijicon, Primary Arms, Holosun, and I'm sure EOTech and a few other ones out there as well. The performance is pretty good. Prisms are usually small, tough, the glass is relatively clear, and since they're all basically made overseas, they're all relatively inexpensive, and the performance variance isn't that high. A couple very important things to note about your magnifier choice is going to be, one, the size of the body, because that is actually going to dictate your mechanical eye relief. Most magnifiers have between 2.5 and 3 inches of eye relief, though that of course starts at the back of the optic, so if your optic is simply longer, you don't have to mount it as far back on your rifle to achieve the same mechanical eye relief, if that makes sense. Next up, very important, is going to be the mount itself and the mount style. Now, fortunately, the Primary Arms in my right hand uses the standard 2-bolt pattern, which is going to be the same as Vortex, Trijicon, EOTech, probably most of the other Unity is going to be the same as well, versus the Holosun, which is smaller, crappier, and it is not compatible with the other mounts. So while I actually like the Holosun HM3X quite a bit, the mounts are more fragile and simply worse than the aftermarket options on the 2-bolt variety, like the Primary Arms 3X. Now, there are also different styles of mounts, so these are both flip to side. That is my personal preference, though I know a lot of you guys also like the Unity flip to center. Flip to center is fine for most things. It usually requires your front optic to be a little bit higher up to actually get the magnifier low enough and out of the way, so we're talking 193 or 22, something like that, which I don't prefer running all of my dots that tall. I simply don't think it's needed, and it's more likely a result of CQB propaganda videos rather than actual need for you giraffe necks out there. Bringing it back to Primary Arms, in their 3X variant, not the 6X, but the 3X variant, they have a option for the ACSS Pegasus reticle, which is essentially just a ranging bracket built into the bottom of your magnifier. It is essentially just a plus in every way. It's low, it's out of the way, and it gives you a ranging reticle where you're probably not going to have one in your red dot, but you have one in the magnifier itself. Now, if you have it on a QD mount, you can use it to range without pointing your rifle at something that you don't necessarily want to engage, so it has a little bit more purpose there. Keep it in mind, though, if you like those flip to center mounts that we mentioned earlier, and you try and mount the ranging reticle upside down, because that's how they mount on those Unity flip to center mounts, well, it's probably not going to be quite as effective, so flip to side, stay winning. But now let's get to the Primary Arms GLX 6X magnifier and the argument for more magnification. Now, full disclosure, this was sent in by a kind viewer of the channel Mitzvah TV for me to review. So I do have a relationship with Primary Arms. They've sent me a lot of stuff in the past. I've canceled all my affiliates and stuff like that. I have a dealer account with them, so I still buy some stuff from them. So there is a relationship there, but I did not get this from them. Getting the basic specs out of the way, it's about 4.5 inches long, 7.5 ounces before the mount, which in this case is the LaRue flip to side, which I actually do like quite a bit. Objective size is about 28 millimeters with 6x magnification, giving you an exit pupil of a rather forgiving 4.6. Field of view at 100 yards is rated at 19.1 feet, which for a 6x magnifier is actually very good. Not quite top tier, but very good field of view. Now, with that big exit pupil, 4.6 millimeters, that also gives you a relatively forgiving eye box for a 6x magnifier. With that larger exit pupil, it's actually more forgiving than most LPVOs at 6x, at least if they're a 30 millimeter main tube. In terms of eye relief, they rated it 2.5 inches, which I actually think is a little bit underselling it. I think it's closer to 3 personally, and the eye box, the up, down, left, and right, is relatively forgiving. Now, not as forgiving as 3x magnifiers, but better than what I was expecting with the 6x magnifier, so I was pleasantly surprised that I could actually manage to do positional shooting and not have an issue just seeing through the thing. It's very important. So we can use the 6x magnification, but what, if anything, is it good for? And I think this simply carries the magnified concept to its logical extreme. I don't think you would ever go with more magnification than this, simply because you are magnifying whatever is in front of it. So if you have good glass, you're going to have decent results. If you have bad glass in front of it, you're just magnifying bad glass to an extreme degree. So there is a lot of diminishing returns, just like with LPVOs or most scopes in general, but especially with magnifiers, because you're magnifying whatever you put in front of it. However, with a decent optic in front of it, whether an aim point, whether even a SIG Romeo 5 I've used in front of it, or a SIG Romeo 8T behind me currently, you can maximize the reticle within your optic if you have one. Now, it is certainly not going to turn your red dot rifle into a DMR, but it can help push the envelope slightly, though it doesn't totally alter the use case. At the end of the day, it is still just more positive identification and making out more difficult targets. So for the very specific example, at 150 yards at the range that I attend, there is a know your limits rack, which goes all the way down to 4 inches at 150 yards. So just using a 2 MOA red dot, or at least a red dot that's supposed to be 2 MOA at that distance and target size is very difficult. With a 3x magnifier, it is certainly doable, and I have done it before, not very successfully, but I have done it. But with 6x magnification under the correct set of circumstances, it allows that to become much more doable and, importantly, much more repeatable rather than just sending a bunch of rounds down range in the general vicinity of a very, very small target. Having that 6x magnification does allow you to be a little bit more precise.
Wow, no way, dude. 4 for 4 on the know your limits. That was just luck.
Does that mean that you need to be throwing away your 3x magnifiers and swapping over to the GLX 6x that you told you not to worry about? Well, no. The 3x magnifiers still do what they're supposed to do, give you a little bit of positive identification, maximize your maximum point blank range, that sort of thing. However, if you're looking for more magnification, depending on your circumstances, depending on your matches, depending on your locale, whatever it might be, 6x is kind of the extreme. But fortunately, there are some other options as well. 4 and 5x magnifiers exist, and they're kind of a midway point in terms of performance. A little bit more forgiving while providing more magnification than a 3x without going quite all of the way. Now, if we're talking again just about the GLX 6x, I think for a certain group of people, if you are looking to kind of maximize your red dot guns and not go fully to an LPVO or a prison setup or something like that, you really want to get the most out of that red dot and you prefer just using a red dot, a 6x magnifier might work for some of you, and the GLX 6x is the best one that I've tried, but that's room for 2. But with all that out of the way, gentlemen, let me know what your favorite length of magnifier is in the comments down below. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.